The steady beeping of machines echoed softly through the quiet hospital room, where a fragile pregnant woman lay resting after a risky procedure, her breathing slow and careful as she clutched the thin blanket. The air felt tense, almost too still, until the door suddenly burst open. A furious woman stormed inside, her eyes blazing with uncontrollable jealousy, her heels striking sharply against the floor. Before anyone could react, she rushed forward and lunged at the defenseless patient, her voice trembling with rage as she accused her of stealing the man she believed was hers. Nurses shouted in panic, rushing in as equipment crashed loudly to the ground. The pregnant woman, terrified, instinctively curled around her stomach, trying desperately to protect her unborn child as the attack grew more violent. Fear filled the room. But what the attacker didn't know was that the woman she touched wasn't just any patient. She was the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the city. She was the kind of woman people admired without fully understanding why. There was a quiet elegance in the way she carried herself, a softness in her voice, and a warmth in her presence that made others feel at ease. Kind-hearted and deeply compassionate, she never used her background to elevate herself above others. Though she was the daughter of a billionaire, she had chosen a simple, grounded life after marriage, leaving behind luxury for what she believed was genuine love and stability. Her heart was pure, perhaps too pure for the world she lived in. She believed in forgiveness, in second chances, and above all, in loyalty. To her, marriage was sacred, a bond built on trust, respect, and unwavering commitment. She loved her husband deeply, never questioning his words or doubting his intentions, convinced that their relationship was as strong as she believed it to be. Now, she carried their first child, a dream she had held close to her heart for years. But the journey hadn't been easy. Complications had made her pregnancy high risk, forcing her into the sterile safety of a hospital room, where doctors monitored her closely day and night. Each moment was filled with caution, every small movement measured, every heartbeat precious. Despite the fear, she remained hopeful. She imagined holding her baby, building a loving family, and living the peaceful life she had always wanted. Yet beneath that hope was a fragile vulnerability. She had no idea that while she fought to protect her unborn child, betrayal was quietly growing around her. She trusted her husband completely, not knowing he was hiding a dangerous secret. To the outside world, he was everything a man should be: charming, successful, and effortlessly confident. People admired him for his achievements, his polished manners, and the way he seemed to have the perfect life. At social events, he carried himself with ease, always saying the right things, always wearing the right smile. No one questioned him, and no one suspected that behind that flawless image, he was living a carefully constructed lie. Away from the public eye, he had been leading a double life. What began as harmless business meetings with a striking, ambitious woman slowly crossed boundaries. Conversations became personal, late-night discussions turned into secret encounters, and before long, an affair had taken root. The mistress was everything his wife was not: bold, demanding, and fiercely possessive. She craved power, attention, and the status she believed she deserved. Unlike his gentle and trusting wife, she asked questions, made demands, and refused to accept being second. Over time, her attachment deepened into obsession. She didn't just want him. She wanted his life, his name, and the place his wife held. In her mind, she was already the rightful partner, and the woman at home was nothing more than an obstacle waiting to be removed. Caught between two worlds, he chose deception. He whispered promises to the mistress about a future together, while maintaining his marriage for reputation and financial security. Every word he spoke was a lie to someone. And slowly, the tension began to build. The mistress wasn't willing to stay hidden anymore, and she was about to make a move that would change everything. In her mind, there was never any doubt about where she stood. She didn't see herself as the other woman or a temporary distraction. She believed she was the real partner, the one who truly understood him, the one who deserved to stand beside him in every sense. The wife, to her, was nothing more than an inconvenience, a barrier that had somehow remained in place longer than it should have. And the more she thought about it, the more that belief hardened into something dangerous. When she discovered the pregnancy, something inside her shifted completely. What had once been jealousy turned into a consuming obsession. To her, that unborn child wasn't innocent. It was a symbol, a permanent bond that tied him to his wife in a way she could never break. It meant losing control, losing influence, and worst of all, losing the future she had already imagined as her own. In her eyes, everything she wanted was slipping away. Her behavior grew, increasingly unstable. She spent hours stalking the wife's social media, analyzing every picture, every smile, every moment of happiness that felt like a personal attack. She confronted him more often, demanding he leave his wife, pressuring him with ultimatums he kept avoiding. Each refusal, each delay, only fueled her anger further. She became reckless, unpredictable, and dangerously fixated. Then she learned the wife was hospitalized, weak, alone, and vulnerable. And in that moment, something dark settled inside her. That was the moment she made a decision, one that would push her beyond redemption. The hospital corridor had been quiet just moments before, filled only with the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant beeping of monitors. Nurses moved calmly between rooms, their voices low, their measured. Then, everything changed. The sharp echo of hurried footsteps broke the calm, growing louder and more aggressive with each passing second. Before anyone could react, the silence shattered into chaos as a woman pushed past the nurses, ignoring their calls to stop. Her face was tense, her eyes wild with anger as she made her way straight to a single room. She didn't knock. The door swung open violently, slamming against the wall. Inside, the pregnant woman looked up in confusion, her weak body barely able to shift against the bed. For a split second, there was only silence. Then the shouting began. Accusations flew through the air, harsh and relentless. The mistress's voice trembled with fury as she hurled words filled with jealousy and blame, refusing to listen, refusing to stop. The pregnant woman tried to remain calm, her voice soft and pleading as she begged her to leave, to think clearly, to not do something they would both regret. But her words fell on deaf ears. Rage had already taken control. In an instant, the confrontation turned physical. The mistress stepped forward, grabbing her, pushing her back against the bed, her anger spilling over into violence. Equipment rattled and crashed as the struggle intensified. The pregnant woman instinctively wrapped her arms around her stomach, trying desperately to protect her unborn child as fear overwhelmed her. Nurses rushed in, shouting for help, trying to pull the attacker away, but the damage had already been done. The room was filled with panic, noise, and confusion. Then suddenly, everything slowed. The pregnant woman gasped, her face draining of color as she clutched her stomach tightly. Her body trembled before collapsing back onto the bed, her strength giving out completely. Alarms rang loudly as doctors rushed in, pushing everyone aside, their voices urgent as they prepared for emergency intervention. The atmosphere shifted from chaos to desperate urgency in seconds. And in that moment, the mistress stood frozen, her breathing heavy, her anger slowly replaced by something else, something closer to realization. But it was too late. In that moment, the mistress thought she had won, but she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. As the doctors fought to stabilize the pregnant woman, the hospital floor shifted into emergency mode. Nurses moved quickly between rooms, security personnel rushed in, and the once controlled environment turned tense with urgency. Questions began flying. Who was responsible? How did this happen? And how had someone managed to force their way into a protected ward? Security immediately began reviewing footage, speaking to witnesses, and locking down the area. Within minutes, fragments of the truth started to surface. Staff whispered among themselves, their expressions changing from concern to shock as a critical detail emerged. The woman in that hospital bed wasn't just another patient fighting through a difficult pregnancy. She was the daughter of a man whose name carried immense power, an influential billionaire known across the city for his authority, his reach, and his unwavering stance against injustice. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Administrators who had been calm moments ago now moved with visible anxiety, issuing orders, making calls, trying to contain what could quickly become a scandal of enormous scale. Word spread quietly through elite circles, faster than anyone expected. Yet the mistress, standing at the center of it all, remained unaware. Her posture still held traces of arrogance, her expression defiant, as if she hadn't yet grasped the magnitude of what she had done. Then, in the middle of the chaos, a single phone call was made. And on the other end of that call, a father heard what happened to his daughter. He was not a man who reacted impulsively. Known across the city as calm, calculated, and extraordinarily powerful, he carried an authority that didn't need to be announced. People listened when he spoke, and even when he didn't, his presence alone was enough to command silence. When he received the call, he didn't shout, and he didn't panic. His voice remained steady, his questions precise. But behind that controlled tone was something far more unsettling, a silence that carried weight, the kind that signaled consequences no one could escape. Within a short time, the hospital entrance transformed. A convoy of sleek luxury cars pulled in one after another, drawing immediate attention. Security personnel stepped out first, scanning the surroundings, clearing pathways, and ensuring everything was under control. Staff members exchanged nervous glances as the atmosphere shifted from urgent to intimidating. When he finally stepped inside, everything seemed to pause. Conversations quieted, movements slowed, and an unspoken tension filled the air. He didn't waste time. Surrounded by security, he walked straight through the corridors with purpose, his expression unreadable. No one dared to stop him. No one even tried. The chaos that had filled the hospital moments earlier now bent around his presence, as if he had already taken control without saying a word. When he reached the room, he saw her, his daughter, lying unconscious, pale and fragile, surrounded by doctors working urgently to stabilize her. For the briefest moment, something cracked beneath his composed exterior. Pain flickered in his eyes, followed by a heavy wave of guilt and fierce protectiveness. But it lasted only a second. His expression hardened, his posture straightened, and the man everyone feared returned. In a low, controlled voice, he began issuing orders. Every detail was to be investigated. Every person involved was to be identified. And the one responsible would not escape accountability. There was no hesitation, no uncertainty. Only certainty of what would come next. He wasn't just a father anymore, he was a force no one could stop. It didn't happen all at once. At first, he thought he could still control the situation, still explain things, still protect the image he had built so carefully over the years. But as the truth began to surface, he felt the ground beneath him slowly give way. The lies he had told, the secrets he had hidden, everything he thought was secure started unraveling right in front of him. The affair was no longer hidden. It was exposed in the worst possible way, leaving no room for denial. His negligence became painfully clear. He had failed to protect his own wife when she needed him the most. Every decision he had made, every moment he had chosen deception over honesty, now stood against him. When the father approached him, there was no shouting, no physical threat, just a cold, controlled presence that felt far more dangerous. The words spoken were few, but they carried the weight of absolute authority. There was no negotiation, no chance to explain. Judgment had already been made. The consequences followed immediately. Business partners began distancing themselves, unwilling to be associated with scandal. Deals collapsed overnight. His reputation, once flawless, shattered beyond repair. Financial pressure mounted as opportunities disappeared one by one. He tried to speak, to apologize, to beg for another chance, but his words meant nothing now. He didn't lose everything in a moment, he lost it piece by piece. The mistress had always believed she was untouchable, that her confidence and cunning could shield her from consequences. But that illusion shattered in an instant. By the end of the day, She was either facing arrest or public exposure, her actions broadcasted to everyone who had once admired or envied her. There was no dramatic confrontation, no sensational showdown. The billionaire father's revenge was silent, calculated, and far more effective than any public spectacle could ever be. Every move was deliberate. Legal action was initiated immediately, ensuring she could no longer escape accountability. Her carefully cultivated social reputation crumbled under the weight of truth, leaving her isolated from the circles she had once moved in with ease. Every opportunity she had relied upon, the favors, connections, and privileges, vanished as though they had never existed. She could no longer manipulate situations in her favor. The world she had tried to seize now rejected her entirely. The transformation was stark. The confident, arrogant woman who had once stormed into a hospital with fury now trembled with fear, desperate to find a way out of a situation she could no longer control. She understood, finally and fully, the magnitude of what she had done. The power she once chased became the very thing that crushed her. Slowly, her eyelids fluttered open, and the sterile hospital lights came into focus. The steady beeping of monitors was reassuring, and a sense of relief washed over the room. The doctors spoke softly, confirming what she had feared most. The baby was safe. The physical danger had passed, but the emotional scars ran deeper, etched into her heart by betrayal and fear. Her father, who had been a storm of authority moments before, now softened, kneeling beside her bed with a tenderness few had ever seen. His hands held hers, and his voice, usually commanding, was gentle as he reassured her, offering both comfort and unwavering protection. In that quiet moment, she realized the truth about those around her, who truly stood by her and whose presence mattered most. She also understood the life she deserved, one filled with love, respect, and safety, far from deceit and danger. Though shaken and weary, she felt a spark of resilience within herself. She didn't just survive the attack, she found the strength to rebuild her life. In the aftermath, the city buzzed with whispers, the story of the hospital attack spreading quickly through social circles and news outlets. Yet justice didn't arrive with grand spectacles or loud declarations. It came quietly, with consequences that reshaped lives and exposed hidden truths. The husband's world lay in ruins, the mistress faced the weight of her actions, and the pregnant wife emerged stronger, her resilience shining through the fear and betrayal she had endured. In the end, the incident served as a stark reminder. One moment of rage destroyed everything for some and revealed the true strength of others.